So I just wanted to take a minute to say good morning to everybody and to literally tell you I'm so delighted that you're here with us today. It seems like a long time coming to get on Congressman Chabot's schedule, and this has been really important to the township for quite a while, actually. Since I was elected about 18 months ago, and I was really kind of digging into small business and how important you are to the economic growth of Deerfield Township, and thereupon the economic growth of Warren County, because the township is the leading indicator of how healthy Warren County is right now. I'm just so thrilled to have you here. So as Jim Flick said to me, over the weekend, hey, we've got 1,000 businesses, over 1,000 businesses in Deerfield alone that employ nearly 30,000 people. And then when you add in the 40,000 people that live here and call Deerfield home, I just feel like your strength is our strength, and anything we can do to make you healthier, we're in. We want to be in. So Congressman Chabot has just been the leader for our community with small business. As a ranking member on the Committee of Small Business, there's nothing this man can't do. There's no knowledge he doesn't have. And I want to utilize him.
I can live up to that.
I want to utilize him as much as we can in our community to make us healthier. So I am humbled to introduce him. He's been serving our community for years. We are just so blessed to have this time. Thank you for coming out.
Absolutely.
And I'm going to sit down and learn from you. I'm going to go out here. I'm not sitting here.
Yeah, happy to. If you don't mind, maybe we could move on one side or the other. And just kind of feel a little less, that way we're all kind of together. And you're free to move the chairs around any way you want. We'll make Lil pick them all up for it. Then we're all kind of here anywhere you want.
Would you like a table in front of you?
No, this is fine. That's fine. No, let's go on this side of the room. No. But anyway, thanks for coming out. Really do appreciate it. And I'm Steve Chabot. I have the honor to represent the folks of the 1st Congressional District, and this is well represents the folks here in Deerfield Township, and all of Deerfield Township is in our Congressional District. All of Warren County is in our Congressional District. Most of Hamilton County, not all of it, but most of it is in our district as well, and most of the city of Cincinnati is also in our district. As you probably know, we have a couple offices, one here in Warren County. We're in Lebanon, just down the street from the Golden Lamb. We're up on the 3rd floor. You're welcome to stop by anytime and visit. Our office is your office, and we also have an office in Hamilton County. We're in the Crew Tower downtown up on the 30th floor, so a little further away, but that's also your office. And then we have an office, as Lowell knows, up in Washington, and some of you have been in our office as well. We're in the Rayburn building. There's 3 House office buildings right across the street from the Capitol building. And I know a number of you came up to Washington, I guess about a month ago, approximately. You have kind of the Warren County fly-in each year. I think we had about 70 or 80 people there this time. And it's a great group. Really enjoyed it a lot. And so some of the things that we'll probably talk about this morning, you may have heard up there when you came up. And I'm not going to talk that long because we're just going to kind of open this up. And we've got a lot of folks, Mike, who know a lot more about some of these areas specifically, than I do when it comes to workforce and other things, and the Career Center and SBDC, Small Business Development Centers. But anyway, as Lowell mentioned, I happen to be, for the last 2 Congresses, I was the chairman of the U.S. House of Representatives Small Business Committee. Congress is divided up into about 20 different committees in the House, and then there's committees over in the Senate. I'm on 3 committees. The one I just mentioned, Small Business. I'm on the Foreign Affairs Committee, and I'm on the Judiciary Committee. And as you probably know, we had a change of management in the House as a result of the last election. And so the party that I happen to belong to, the Republican Party, lost the election. So all the committee chairmanships go over to the other party. And then the lead Republican on the committee is called the ranking member. So I'm now the ranking member of the Small Business Committee. Fortunately, we have a very good working relationship with the Democrats on the committee. That's not the case in a lot of the committees, especially one of the other committees I'm on, the Judiciary Committee, where we have a hearing this week with none other than Mr. Mueller, and he's coming over, said that he was done, read it in the report. I'm not going to testify. Well, he'll be up there this week, and we'll be asking him all kinds of embarrassing questions and things. So, but on this committee, we really do work together. When I became chair of the committee, I was determined to kind of make sure that we do that, because it's better, not just for the folks on the committee, but for the country, because small business is such a critical area of our nation's economic growth. About 30 million small businesses all across the country, a lot of them here in Deerfield Township, and a lot in Mason, a lot all over the place. About half of the American people work for a small business. About 70% of the new jobs are created by small businesses, so they're really important. Now, the definition of small businesses in the SBA, it can be a fairly large business, up to about 500 employees is typically the way they're determined. And the SBA, one of the main things it has are various loan programs. So the largest one is a 7A loan program, and one of the things that we do on the committee is take in information from folks about how these various loan programs are working, how we can make them better. Now, we're the government, and so getting a loan through the SBA tends to be a pretty paperwork intensive effort, as you're probably aware if you've ever tried to do that. Now, most loans that a small business takes out don't have anything to do with the SBA. I think it's 3% or something like that. So actually, most loans are through the private sector, and even the loans that are the 7A loans, for example, or the 504 loan program, or any of these others. It's generally not government money that goes out to the small business. We back the money that a private bank would give, in case of default, and so that's kind of the way it all works. But anyway, we really do work together. For example, last week we had what's called a markup in the committee. A markup means that you're passing a bill, or you're trying to, in the committee before it goes to the floor, for the floor to vote on, and then the Senate will have to vote on it. It goes to the president's desk, and then it becomes law. Well, the markup is when we're dealing with that legislation in the committee. We generally already had hearings on it, talked about it, and stuff like that, and we're voting on it, and people can offer amendments to change the bill in some manner, and then we vote on those things. So that's what a markup is. You mark up the bill, meaning you change it in some way. Well, we had 5 bills that all had to do with small business, of course, the Small Business Committee. They were all bipartisan. They all passed in the committee, and they'll now have the floor. A couple weeks ago, we had, I think, 4 bills. Last week, they had to do mostly with veteran small businesses, disabled veteran-owned small businesses, etc. The other ones that had to do with changing the loan programs in general. That's what they did. So anyway, that's kind of what the Small Business Committee spends a lot of time on. There's kind of a number of areas that are important. One would be access to capital. I've already kind of touched on that with the loan programs. Regulations, another area that we, in general, we're trying to do away with as many regulations, the paperwork that small businesses have to deal with. Now, my party and the chairman, now her name is Nydia Velasquez. The two parties are a little bit different on this. I think the party that I represent, that's one of the areas that we really think the government, it's too involved in our lives, and there's too much complication. They have a tendency to think that the government needs to do more, and so there's kind of a philosophical difference to some degree. I don't want to get into a lot of politics here, but we, as I say, we tend to work together. But when the president, took office, he mentioned it a number of times how he wanted to get rid of 2 existing regulations for every new one coming out of Washington, and we've actually surpassed that. So I think we're heading in the right direction on that. Taxes is another area that we've focused a lot of attention on. You probably are familiar with the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. That was targeted at individuals and businesses, especially small businesses, and the taxes came down dramatically on small businesses. I'd like to say that we made the code less complicated, but that's not the case, certainly with respect to business. It's still pretty complicated. So it may take a while to figure it all out, but the taxes overall have come down pretty dramatically. So we want you to keep more of your money so you can buy that equipment and take it off in that year in many instances, which is a real advantage, as you all know, I'm sure. So taxes is key. And then on individuals, about 85% of the American people have their taxes reduced. In our district, the 1st Congressional District, the average was about $2,400 per family that taxes were reduced. There's a lot of misinformation, I would say, out there, acting like only the rich got their tax cut, nobody else did. And the public sort of has bought that. They heard it so many times. But the facts are about 85% are paying less. As I say, $2,400 is the average in our area. Now, did the wealthy get their taxes cut? Yes. And if you look just dollar for dollar, probably more because they're paying in more, But most people did get their taxes cut. Trade is the 4th area that we are involved in, and it's kind of controversial out there right now. We've got our challenges with China, and I think the president's right to the extent that China's kind of been eating our lunch for a long time, and jobs have been heading out of the country for various reasons. They've been stealing our intellectual property and one thing after another. But I tend to be a free trader, so I am concerned about kind of the uncertainty that it's interjected into the kind of economy and farm community and lots of other folks too. So it's an area where there is a fair amount of turmoil right now. Trade, we're not sure where this is all going to end up. And then the 5th area is government contracting and trying to let small businesses get their fair share. Right now, I think it's arguably there's kind of an old boys network. If you're already dealing with the government, you probably got a better chance than somebody new trying to get into this. And so we're trying to make it a more open and transparent process about how people actually have a chance and making sure people do have a legitimate chance. And because you can spend a lot of time and effort and then end up nowhere, and we can't solve that because not everybody's going to get the contract, and the taxpayers benefit when you have a lot of competition. So one's going to get it and 9 aren't. So you have to decide if you're going to spend your time and effort doing that. So anyway, that's what I wanted to cover. So at this point, I would have droned on for another hour, except fortunately somebody was brave enough to raise their hand. Thank you.
Sir. How you doing today?
Yeah, good.
Hey, so you were just talking about government contracting and part of the committee. Have you guys discussed streamlining contract vehicles? Because one of the major stumbling blocks for a lot of small businesses is every installation, whether it be Department of Defense and the down trace, like your Air Force, your Army, are using different contract vehicles like your schedules, like your IT-70s, your NetSense, that require small businesses to jump through hoops, maybe if they've already filled out things like the 8A application or an 8A, but they need all these contract vehicles to even compete, and that's what a lot of them have kind of stymied the water because they can't get in the first couple of years to get a government contract, not because someone else was doing it before and it's the good old boy system, is because they can't get on that contract vehicle fast enough because it closed for 5 years. They got into their, say, 8A today, but they have to wait 5 years to even get on that contract vehicle to compete on the contract.
Yeah, we are discussing that, and we haven't come up with the perfect streamlined way to do it, but we're working on it, and it's one of my reasons for being here today is just what you're saying, is to get input. And I've got some staff folks around here that are also making notes, mental as well as physical, and so that I can take what I hear here back to my committee staff folks and tell them what we heard about this and what are we doing on these things. So, but yes, we are working on it. Unfortunately, I can't tell you that we've 3.5 weeks, it'll be all taken care of,
I'm with the SBA, we've met before. I'm Joshua Stutzman, I'm the branch manager here.
Sure.
But I come from government contracting, so I have like a unique aspect or perspective on all of this.
Right. And the SBA does, a very good job, but it can be tough for people to wind their way through,
And they think we can change it. They think we can make the government take those contract vehicles away. Obviously, no, we can't.
Yeah, absolutely. So anyway, let's just open it up, and you're free to tell me any concerns that you have. It doesn't necessarily have to be about anything we've talked about here either, too. It could be. So what about those 4 Lady Congressman. I mean, I'm happy to talk about whatever the heck you want to talk. I hope we don't have to talk about that today, but I'm just saying, you know, anything you want to talk about, you know, we've got essentially about an hour or so. Yes, sir.
I have a question.
Sure.
So I'm in the technology sector. We run a technology startup over here. And we've been looking at tax incentives for investing in technology. So it looks like the Canadian government is giving almost a 40% tax incentive to employ people over there. And people in artificial intelligence, machine learning. Is there any plans to give incentives to companies over here to invest more in technology areas?
Well, I mean, there are certain things in the code that exist in the code currently,
Right.
you know, for people, and there were, you know, some things in the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. It's pretty complicated, and I would, you can actually contact our office and we can get you specific things about that. You know, I can't tell you anything specific. I mean, you know, relative to being able to, you know, write off equipment in the first year, or, you know, we're working on workforce, you know, and trying to come up with new ways to. I don't know if Mike, if you might want to talk about that, kind of what relative to workforce, because I know that's one of the main things that I hear, you know, nowadays is we. You know, I've got these positions open. I could hire 8 people. I could hire 12 people. You know, but I'm having a hard time getting somebody that that actually is qualified, or that can pass a drug test and will show up for work on time, and that kind of thing too. I hear that a lot.
Well,
You want to touch on what you guys
Warren
do?
County, it's a pretty shallow labor pool. You know, I think we're below the national average and the state average for unemployment. So I think the people that want to work are working. So how do we get the people that are kind of on the edges, that are on the margins, to at least fill maybe a part-time job or a minimum wage job? How do we get those people out? Number one is skill development, and the Warren County Career Center in Lebanon is focusing on that, especially on the adult education side, whether it is technology or medical coding or engine repair, something that is a service that we all need or will need. The Career Center has programs that is continuing to upgrade those programs based on demand. So I think the information is out there. It's just a matter of marketing and trying to get that message out to the people that need to hear it. So we're continually, I work at a Career Center, but I'm not employed by the Career Center, but I am in that universe out there, so I see what they're going through. So it's just a matter of messaging and marketing to get that word.
And tell them about, you know, there's a lot of SBDCs, but tell them about the honor that you all received down there a while back.
Well, this I didn't want to bring this up, but I appreciate
you
you
did.
mentioning that. A couple of honors. In 2018, I was selected by my 90 peers in the state of Ohio as the state star, so the best SBDC consultant in Ohio. We just selected 2019, so I had to pass the crown on to someone else a couple weeks ago, but that was a nice honor. And then the Columbus district, where Josh is out of, which represents Columbus and the south to the river, for the SBA, we were selected the top SBDC in that region. The Northern Ohio SBDC out of Youngstown went on to, it was kind of like we were playing Duke in the first round of the bracket, and we got knocked out, and they went all the way, and they were selected as the winner of the national SBDC of the year. So so it was an honor to lose to our friends in Youngstown, Ohio, but dang it. I thought we had a chance.
You know, something else that might be helpful, because these things can also oftentimes be a networking opportunity where, you know, you may not necessarily know who everybody else will be here, and there may be an opportunity down the road for something to come together, either a business opportunity or whatever. So why don't everybody tell each other a little bit about, were you going to say something?
Well, just kind of along the lines of workforce that you brought up, and this is not really a concern yet, but it's been in conversation more and more in the last month is the $15 an hour minimum wage rate. I know that bill passed the House.
Yeah, I doubt if it's
last
gonna
week.
go through the Senate.
So I kind of wanted to
I don't think
get,
the president would sign it.
yeah, I kind of wanted to get your official take on that, because I can only speculate.
Yeah.
And it is coming up more and more. How will that, if the party does flip in the White House, how will that potentially affect small businesses at the state and local level?
Well, I think it would adversely impact small businesses in particular, all businesses really, and many businesses are paying more than that. But the CBO, the Congressional Budget Office, did a study on this and said that it could cost up to 3.7 million jobs lost as a result of that. So I voted against it. It did pass, as I mentioned. We're under new management now. I don't expect it to pass in the Senate, and I'm quite certain the president would not sign it if it did. But I don't think it's going to get to the Senate. So we want people to be paid as much as possible. That's and most employers, I think, do that. And it's competitive out there. But I think you're essentially making it much tougher for folks to get on that first rung of the ladder, and that's the people that will lose are people you need to have in the workforce, and so I think it can have a real negative effect on the economy and on a whole lot of people in this country. Although when you just ask the question on a survey and you say, do you think we ought to hike the minimum wage? Well, people say yes in general. When you just do simple polling. If you get into the details, you kind of educate folks before the vote, and it changes. But that would be my vote. Well, why don't we kind of go around? Maybe we can tell our background, kind of what business or how you got to where you are now, or that kind of thing. So you want to?
Well, I'm so simple, y'all. I lived in Deerfield for about a decade, and I didn't like what the former board of trustees was doing. So I decided to put my money where my mouth was and run to make a difference for my community and really give the voice back to the people who lived here. So I feel like we are on a great path in Deerfield for connecting the public with our businesses and people who want to live here and want to go to school here. Just, I think, a lot happier having a voice back in where they live. So it has been a pleasure to serve with these couple of years, and we'll see what happens in the fall. Yeah.
Excellent. Good deal.
I don't want to speak to anyone with my back to you. Good morning, my name is Joshua Stutzman. I'm the branch manager here at the Cincinnati United States Small Business Administration. Cincinnati boy, born and raised, but I've been the past 9 years in Florida with the SBA in our Miami office. Just recently came back about a month and a half ago. And before that, I was in Tampa, Florida with the Department of Defense doing government contracting. My main focus here in Cincinnati is to work with small businesses, local resources, SBDCs, and our partners to find businesses that we can help with counseling, coaching, access to capital, and contracting help. I specialize in government contracting, and that is its own language. A lot of people in small businesses that say, hey, can I work with the government? Am I ready to? That's what we're here for, to give you kind of the navigation of that murky water.
So he'll take all the tough questions from you.
Good morning, I'm Scott Lamb with Legend Webworks, and we are a local web design company, 550 clients locally, 300 cities across North America. We do the township's website, we do Mr. Stater's website, and we're undergoing a rebuild with him right now to get it on a modern platform. And we've been around since 2002, so the web business is wonderful, and I don't have any complaints or questions or gripes. So
Okay.
Thanks for the job you do.
Thank you very much.
I'm Matt Harrington. I work for LCS. Worked there for 19 years. I was the second employee hired. We have currently about 300. We're a software company. We write property management software for tens of thousands of customers across the country. It's been a long, enjoyable ride for me.
Second employee, there's 300 now. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I'm Chuck Stevens. I'm the CFO with LCS, so I work with Matt. And we're good, second employee. I was in public accounting for about 25 years, and LCS was a client of mine for about 20 of those. And one of the questions that I have for you, and we'll get to later, is on the post-Wayfair sales tax regime. I think that kind of pushed us over the top of realizing we needed to hire more finance and accounting professionals internally just to deal with some of the complexities of the landscape of, kind of where we are today. So glad to be here.
I'm Mike Diggin with Minuteman Press in Lebanon. Lived here in the township for 35 years. Known Minuteman for 28 years. And also on the board of Supervisors Conference. So from a workforce standpoint, one of the best and good to have in our backyard.
My name is Patrick Baker, CEO, founder of a company called Polarum. We are a medical technology company. We do wearable textiles. So we're actually embedding sensors into fabrics. Our sensor is actually made out of thread and fiber. It's not plastic or metal. So when the material comes off the machine, it's already got the sensor in it. And we impregnate the threading with metal particles and elastomers. And we actually can do some amazing things. So we're doing clinical trials now at the Cleveland Clinic, Ohio State, place in South Carolina. And we're seeing tremendous results. So have big aspirations. I was just saying we have about 10 employees, about $1 million payroll right now. We raised about $8.4 million with angel investors. We're looking, obviously, setting the tables for that big round for institutional money, private equity, or either IPO. So we're very, very excited about our future. We've had the pleasure of meeting you, sir. You've come to the office one time. Enjoyed that. My whole background's been in healthcare. I spent 30 years in healthcare. Also did 25 years in the military. Retired lieutenant colonel. Did a tour over in Iraq. Flight commander at the largest surgical hospital we had over there. And that was probably the biggest privilege of my life to be able to take care of those guys in that situation. But you had a question about technology. We hired some attorneys. It's complicated, but we actually got $58,000 back in research and development tax credit for the R&D work we did. Yeah. We filed again this year. We'll probably get the same. So there's ways and vehicles out there. It's just, it's complicated, but there's stuff on the books that you just gotta, I can give you our attorneys we used if you wanna,
We don't get that tax credit, but what Canada is doing is now gives you 40% of the salary back as tax credit.
Yeah,
Significant.
That would be nice, yeah.
So it's a first year investment, and we do get the R&D tax credit, so we do get that more. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Eric Reiners. I'm the administrator here at Deerfield Township. I've actually been with Deerfield for 13 years now. Originally from Deerfield Township. Obviously, we've seen tremendous growth and change, in Deerfield, our region, and the county as a whole. One of the things that we've done over the last 18 months is put a little more reinforced emphasis on our economic development efforts. We've created an economic development department. Have now started a CIC, Community Improvement Corporation, as well. Being a township, we're somewhat limited in the types of incentives and resources we can offer to small businesses. So we're very optimistic that by way of this new CIC that we've formed, we're going to take that next step in the economic development realm here in Deerfield and continue to work with businesses to attract and retain and recruit. So thank you all for being here.
Hi everyone, Andrea Enders. I'm with Ready Cincinnati. We're the Regional Economic Development Initiative. So we cover the entire 16 county MSA that we sit in. So 5 counties in Southwest Ohio, 7 in Northern Kentucky, and 4 in Southeast Indiana. We're the Jobs Ohio network partner for Southwest Ohio. And so any incentives, so I know we worked with LCS a few years ago, and a number of other companies in Warren County. The Modula announcement up at the Dayton Daily News building is a recent project that closed in Warren County. Really great opportunity for the region. We work with Jobs Ohio and advocate on behalf of companies for those types of incentives. My role particularly is trying to attract new business to the region. And so we can talk about it later, but it's been interesting that there's a lot of foreign direct investment interest. The Made in America thing, it's working in the sense of foreign companies wanting to put locations in the U.S. I think one of the recent challenges that we heard last week while we were meeting with consultants in economic development in Chicago is there's concern though that they won't be able to get visas or have some of their leadership immigrate to the United States to help get those operations up and running. So it's kind of a paradox that we're seeing now.
And I am Mike Stater, as Congressman Chabot said. I am privileged to be the Executive Director of the Warren County Small Business Development Center for the last 6 years. I'm headquartered at the Warren County Career Center in Lebanon. And I'm actually looking for a part-time assistant. If anyone knows a consultant or ex-banker that wants to fill their day with helping small businesses start and succeed. But we provide confidential and complimentary counseling to, as Josh said, clients under 500 employees. So really our sweet spot in this area is about 100, 150 employees or less is really who we talk to.
My turn. Good morning. I'm Brian Beaudry. I work for Warren County's Office of Economic Development, and we're also staff for Warren County Sport Authority as well. Our mandate is to bring business into the area, get business that's in the county to grow them and expand and help keep people comfortable and happy and employed here in Warren County. I guess I've been on board for the office for 2 years now after a big long stint in summer internship from my university. And we work pretty regularly with our partners here in Deerfield Township, Special District Deerfield project. That's a really exciting development happening. We're trying to be the proper liaison between all the government space and the economic environment we create down here in the county. And we've worked pretty closely with Congressman Chabot's staff on a lot of different things. In fact, we'll be up in your neighborhood on Wednesday for the committee hearing to talk about the Jobs Act. We're bringing a business representative to, kind of be a support factor for you and everything that's going on in the committee. So we appreciate the opportunity to bring a business representative, and we'll see you on Wednesday in your neighborhood up there. So we appreciate that. And as Congressman mentioned before, we're the staff kind of behind the scenes that help set up the fly-in and a lot of different advocacy events that Congressman Chabot has been very important and integral to us in the area. So I'm here representing the county level. If you have any questions, let me know.
And my name is Matt Fetty, and I work for Ohio Means Jobs, Warren County. We're the one stop, as a lot of people may have heard it from, but we're the local workforce development department that receives federal funding to help I think we may be able to offset some of that, because we do have a program which is on-the-job training for new hires, people that may have been dislocated from their job or certain things, to help kind of offset the training costs of them. It's a wage reimbursement of up to 50%, but it caps at $8,000 an individual. So if you guys, I know right now, like Mike talked about a little bit earlier, I think we're sitting at 2.9% unemployment rate in Warren County. One of our big goals is try to connect employers with employees. So we help work with a lot of the soft skill barriers, where we do have training for people that may qualify to help them get their skills upgraded and become employable. So if you want to talk after this, I've got a few cards to help you out.
I'm Piyush Singh. I run a technology startup over here called Terrain Labs, literally half a mile across from here. We fundamentally focused on small business, and what we focus on is really for them to seek insurance, make it a much simpler experience instead of being asked 150 questions. And on the other hand, for the insurance carriers to actually get high veracity data at the same time. So we aggregate information across all different sources to sort of provide that assistance. So I used to work at Great American Insurance for 9.5 years, and then decided to join the startup world and kind of restart myself and reignite myself.
Thank you. Got a lot of interesting people here, obviously. This is a great group of people. I was thinking when you were talking before about the unemployment, it was mentioned here, the unemployment rate being pretty low here, 2.9%. Although there are still 2.9%. So what about those folks? And I had a town hall meeting. I'm trying to remember where this one was. We did one in Lebanon and we did one in Franklin. It came up at one of those two meetings on Friday, and they were talking about with some folks who aren't employed but are receiving kind of the safety net things. They may be getting some sort of housing, whether it's Section 8 or whatever. Maybe getting food stamps, child care, and other things that the taxpayers are supporting. But they get these benefits, and if they're going to take an entry-level job, they're actually taking a cut in the benefits. Now you might think, well, the right thing to do for the country and for yourself long-term is to take that job and give up those benefits, but that's not necessarily the way human nature is. And so we need to come up, we meaning the government in general, needs to come up with a way that perhaps the benefits should continue for a period of time, a temporary period of time, so the person isn't going to necessarily take a cut, not take the job, so that you wean them off of these things and then they become self-supporting. And we haven't found a way to do that yet, or we haven't come up with that, and we need to do it. Have you kind of seen that in your?
Oh yeah, definitely. And that's kind of, like this year and the previous year on the fly, and kind of some of the stuff that people are advocating for. We hear companies that say, I think one of the biggest ones too is like childcare, because it's a hard cutoff and it doesn't do a thing. So then all of a sudden that employee may even be like a quarter an hour raise. They don't want to take it because then they lose their childcare benefit. And then, childcare, the price it is right now, they all of a sudden it's like, well, I don't have childcare. I've got to go worry about getting it set up. So that's one of the problems. I hope, like, if you want any help, anybody trying to navigate it or any suggestions, I'd be more than happy to share stories, but I don't really know how to. It's gonna, I think, be some work to try to figure out how we can make it smooth. It's just instead of a cliff where you drop off, it's a gradual hill.
Yeah.
Fall down.
Well, along those lines, it's got to be concerned is the national debt, with 23 trillion now.
Yeah.
Income to the U.S. Treasury has gone up $1 trillion since 2013 a year. And yet we are still running $1 trillion deficit.
Yeah.
And if we can't get that under control now in this economy, there's no hope for us. The next recession, we're in deep trouble. We have total control, and to me, we've done nothing to address that problem, and we don't even talk about it anymore. To me, the overarching biggest threat to the U.S. is that.
I completely agree with you, but most of my colleagues don't care about it too much, to be honest with you.
Even on the Republican side.
Yeah, too many on the Republican
And
side.
it's obvious they don't.
Almost all on the other side. There are a few exceptions, but most of our guys don't talk about it as much anymore. I'm the one person in the House who's introduced the balanced budget amendment again, which would require us to do it. I mean, I think that we ought to have the discipline to do it without amending the Constitution, but history shows we don't. And so that's what I'm pushing for again, although the chances of it actually passing are slimly none, but at least it does draw attention to it again. What I've tried to do, and I've brought this up at a number of the town hall meetings that I've had, because most people don't have a conception of how that affects their lives, this $22 to $23 trillion debt that we have hanging over our heads. The way I have been trying to tell people, here's how it affects you. You have a home and you pay a mortgage, assuming not everybody has a home, but if you have a home, you pay a mortgage on it, you live there. Well, this huge debt we have hanging over our heads, here's what it is. It's like you have a second home over here, and you're making monthly mortgage payments on the second home over here, but you're not living in it. And that's the national debt, because you're paying taxes, and a higher and higher percentage of that is going to pay that debt off. And so if we could eliminate that, we would all as Americans have a much higher standard of living. Now, fortunately, we haven't seen the dramatic impact that some predicted years ago yet, but it's coming. It's just a matter of when it's going to hit us. And it's interest rates. If China or other investors won't buy the bonds anymore that sustain this whole thing, they're going to skyrocket, and we're going to have to pay even more, and the whole thing, the house of cards kind of comes crashing down on our heads. So, but you're absolutely right, and you're unfortunately absolutely right that not too many people talk about it anymore. I still do, but it's kind of like a voice in the wilderness out there, quite frankly. It's one of the reasons that there's a group that called Citizens Against Government Waste, and some years I have the highest lifetime score of anybody in Congress. I'm always in the top 5 out of 435 in the House, for voting against what they consider to be wasteful spending. I think it's a serious problem, but because it hasn't bitten us too hard yet, people think it never will. But we're going to have to pay the piper. That debt doesn't go away; it's there.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, sure.
Is that all right? So I'm curious, business owners particularly, we're running out of space in Deerfield to continue building. So one of our objectives is redevelopment, especially in some of our commercial spaces that have been vacant for a while. And yet when people come before the township, they are still looking to build somewhere else, build new. So I'm looking for some feedback on why I guess build new when we've got redevelopment options, and what that looks like for somebody who might be investing into their own company and the community. Did that make sense? Redevelopment versus trying to find space to cram something somewhere when we're trying to say, hey, this area needs redevelopment. Do you want to go in here and we'll work with you and we'll do what we can do to incentivize and get people on board, but we need to redevelop instead of building from the ground up. I mean, we're running out of space in Deerfield. So I'm just curious of, why the push to constantly build new instead of going into redevelop. If anybody has any ideas on that, that's something that I think we're constantly talking about internally.
Well, are you looking at redevelopment? So I think a one-off redevelopment is one thing, but if, like say, the township or said, hey, this plot here, we're gonna redevelop this area. You start attracting people to that. So I was in Boston with my brother the other day meeting a client. And we're walking down the street, and he's like, we should have bought one of these apartments here, these condos. And I said, what do you mean? He goes, they were selling for like $50,000, $75,000. The deserted part of Boston downtown, and now it's near Canterbury Street. He goes, these are going for $2 million each, these condos. I mean, so if the city made the effort to just go ahead and revitalize that whole area, which then was a magnet for all of that. So I guess I'm just using that when I hear you say that, I'm thinking, take the bigger picture, let's take this plot and say, we want to redevelop this, here's some, incentives, here's this, but I think if you do the one-offs, that's where they'll say, I just do some new construction, but just.
And are you referencing retail or office, industrial?
I think we've got a space in every one of those categories, you know what I mean? And not just a space, but areas of the township that need some new eyes on it. Because we still have people who want to live here, and we still have people who want to work here. We've got such a huge day population, and we've got the audience, but we do need to redevelop certain areas.
So it can be done. That was, he goes, this is the worst part of town. He goes, now it's where everybody wants it to be.
Yeah,
so it's possible.
And there is state assistance. You've got to have at least 10 to 15 new jobs created over the next over 3-year period. But the Jobs Ohio Revitalization Grant and Loan Program are for just that, except for the fact that we wouldn't do anything in the retail space. It would need to be office or industrial. The space has to be vacant and really underutilized, not something that just sort of needs a makeover, but new windows, new HVAC, a lot of those different things are considered eligible costs and can be considered. So we're happy to come in and assess the project and determine if there's a fit there, but that is a great program. And a couple of examples, they didn't get a ton of press, but in Forest Park, they were able to take an old shopping center that had been, vacant and an eyesore, and they were able to renovate that, and it's now manufacturing. And then also too, we had a project over in the city of Hamilton. They had one of those old motels, the Hamilton Inn. I don't know if you guys. It was a rent by the hour, rent by the week kind of place. The city was able to shut it down for 90 days, and they were able to convince the owner to sell it to the manufacturing company right next door. They were able to get money from the state to help demo and do the asbestos removal. So that those programs do exist.
Before being in Congress, I was a county commissioner down in Hamilton County, and prior to that, I was on Cincinnati City Council. And part of our congressional district, but down in Cincinnati reminds me of Boston, and that's over the Rhine. If you look at how that's come along, and I remember when we were on council, literally a couple of those streets were they had the highest murder rates in the entire country, and that includes some pretty rough areas and pretty rough states in the country. They had the highest murder rate down there. And nowadays that property is really going, for a pretty penny, and now you do get the concern that people can't afford it, and so you'll have, you know, affordable housing and all this kind of stuff, issues you wouldn't necessarily have thought back in the day, but boy, it's really going up down. Now, 3CDC has made a considerable effort, the new market tax credit program and things like that, but yeah, some of the urban centers have just, they're on fire all over the country.
Well, and something else I just read, which I wasn't aware of, but there's cities out there that are now paying people to come to their city. Like they're giving them so many, $10,000 to $20,000 if they agree to buy a home, and there's a minimum of a home purchase. You gotta buy a home of X amount, but they're actually paying people to come to.
Well, and
they're trying to attract the millennials, and I never knew that.
Two, what's great is some of them are paying, or it's going towards student loans. So you're sort of helping on two ends, attracting people to the region, but then also helping them pay down that student loan debt. And we definitely have heard of some communities thinking about it, the state, pushing the state to consider it, because essentially the population is just not growing fast enough for us to meet the job demands.
I don't think when businesses are looking for space, they care or go into it thinking new versus existing. It's all about dollars and where can they get what they need for the least cost. And so incentives or anything you can do to make existing space more attractive is what you have to do. You can build a building to meet your exact needs or renovate it, existing space to meet your exact needs, and generally, or a lot of times, that's more expensive than building new.
Can I ask you a question relative to Deerfield? How are annexation issues, and especially with respect to, say, Mason? I mean, are those pretty significant still, or?
No, I think that, you know, currently we have a great working relationship with the city. Obviously, the threat of annexation is, you know, a major concern for the township, right? That could, you know, cripple us if we were to lose our commercial sectors, our business sectors of the township. But I don't feel that the threat of annexation is of major concern. You know, and I think a lot of that's due to the positive relationships we have with the city. And, you know, we're looking at future kind of joint economic development efforts with the city that would benefit both communities. So I think, you know, our approach has been building relationships and capitalizing on those relationships to kind of help ward off that threat. Obviously, it's a concern. It floats out there, right? It's always like that bad nightmare that's in the back of your mind. You know, if it were to happen, it would be very detrimental to the community as a whole.
Having been a county commissioner, you know, a couple of decades ago down in Hamilton, I remember the Harrison Township versus the city of Harrison issues. You know, and it was a kind of an ongoing thing, and then we have to approve them or disapprove them or whatever. You talk about a no-win situation for a politician, you know, where you're gonna make somebody happy and somebody will never forget.
That's right. And I think our elected officials, both between city council and township, have good working relationships as well. And
So we just call, hey, are you up to anything? What's going on?
Yeah, I remember those days well.
Yeah.
If I could get back to your question real quick, what I can add from the people that I work with is if you're comparing an existing property with a potential new build, sometimes those existing properties don't appraise out high enough, and so the client has to pour more money in to renovate the space. And so their other option is, well, if we're going to buy an existing building, put more money in than we need to, or just go with the new build where we get what we want and everything is up to code, but go with the new one. And that's just maybe the thinking of the 21st century business person. I don't know, but that seems to happen.
Do you have any brownfield issues up here at all?
No, sir.
Yeah, we get that in Mill Creek, they're down in Hamilton County area, in that part of our district. We said we were going to keep this to an hour. We got about a little less than 10 minutes ago. I was thinking maybe we'll take just a couple more minutes here, and then the last 5 minutes, maybe we can do it more informally and just talk, you know, individually or amongst ourselves and stuff. So maybe a couple of wrap-up questions or things that we didn't cover or did. You want to cover more? Yes, I'm sure.
So I said in my intro, I was curious about whether or not the ship sailed on the Wayfair.
Oh, Wayfair, yeah.
Yeah, you know, 'cause we went in a year ago filing tax returns and states to, it's fresh on my mind because today is the deadline in a number of the states, the 28 states, and counting. We had a couple states just about a month. Is there's kind of this race to the bottom for everybody to implement this economic nexus standard. So I didn't know if you guys talk about that in your committee.
We do. I'd like to tell you that, we've got, everybody came to a consensus. We agreed on it and we're passing the legislation, but we're not, we're kind of all over the place on it. And just to bring everybody up to snuff here, we had the Quill decision a long time ago, and then Wayfair. This is kind of the nexus of when a state can tax. It used to have to do it. The Wayfair made it kind of open season that the states can tax, and you don't necessarily have to have a strong presence in a particular state as you used to. So that meant that states can start doing this, and then everybody kind of has to deal with different states, or Congress could act and say, here's the way it's going to be. Well, Congress has not acted at this point, so it's kind of every man, every woman for him or herself out there, and so there's no clear solution to it yet. So I'd like to be able to tell you something more definitive than that, but it's still kind of open. Yes, we're talking about it, but we haven't come to a resolution.
One of the big concerns is the income tax side of things. The next frontier, I think Hawaii's already introduced legislation to say, well, hey, if this economic nexus standard applies to sales tax, how about income tax?
Yeah. And that's one reason where we really ought to act, so that there's a consensus and you can spend your time improving your business and hiring people rather than figuring out who do you owe taxes and what's legitimate and what's not. Spend more and more money on accountants and tax attorneys and that kind of thing. So we ought to come to some consensus on this, but it hasn't happened yet. It's a real problem, no question. And just to add one thing, philosophically, early on, and it's changed a lot. One of my feelings about all this, my positions was, I preferred to keep the internet as tax-free as possible. But at this point, the online sales has become a huge portion of the economy nowadays. And if you just look at Amazon, was that last weekend? Amazon
Prime
Day, yeah. So, and it's huge, and it's getting huger as time goes on. So, maybe one more question or comment, or anything that we didn't cover that you'd like to, or if not, thanks for coming out today. We've got about 5 more minutes before I got to head out to another meeting. But anytime our office can be of any help, please let us know. David McCandless is principally the person that's at our Warren County office. Joe over there, that's Joe Abner, he runs our Hamilton County office, but we're really all over the place. So
well, I just wanted to say on behalf of the Board of Trustees and the administration, thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
This has been great.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Thank you. See you all.